Hello, everyone. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Travis Dougherty, and I'm currently the manager at Maryland Relay. In addition to that, I am recently elected vice chair of the National Association of State Relay Administrators. We have a very exciting webinar to share with you today. And we'd like to introduce you to the Universal Telecommunications Access Platform, affectionately known as UTAP. And I want to share with everyone my journey at how we arrived to the point that we are today with Universal Telecommunication Access Platform, or UTAP. So Maryland Relay was the first state to offer real-time text service as part of their state contract with their relay provider. We were very excited about that. And that's been in place since 2020. And I'd like to share a little bit about what it looks like now, having come this far. And having come this far, we have not generated any minutes of RTT relay service. Now, to clarify, we do have minutes of other relay services that we offer, like caption phones or cart services, things of that nature. But when it comes to RTT relay services, we have yet to generate any momentum. And the Maryland team under the Department of Disabilities has had conversations to try to figure out how to address some of the barriers in generating those minutes. For example, let's talk first about the type of barriers we've identified thus far. First barrier is a lack of awareness. Many people don't know what RTT technology is. Some folks think they know, but they're actually misinformed. And there are several factors that contribute to this. The technology first is not 100% fully functional yet. There are still some limitations. And when I ask folks, what does RTT mean to you? What is RTT? Oftentimes, the typical response that we receive is, isn't that similar to live transcribe? For example, on a Google Doc, the ability to both edit a document at the same time. And in a sense, yes, but when I ask for further clarification in terms of what RTT is, people are often unable to respond. That's the most common misconception that's out there and misunderstanding when it comes to what RTT is. Real-time text is the ability to A, text and receive audio and receive video, as well as data simultaneously. It's the ability to send all that information through all those modalities in real time. And the equivalent would be almost an internet line within a phone line. It's so hard to explain. It's just amazing the capabilities we have with today's technology. And the point is that antiquated linear technology of sending information, like audio information through a phone line, maybe text information through a phone line, those were the limitations for many, many years. With the current RTT technology, this gives us a new way to communicate that is simply amazing. And the first challenge we've recognized is that many people just aren't aware of the capabilities of the current technology. In addition to that, the bulk of the wireless carriers out there, for example, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, to name a few, they are still using legacy systems. When I talked about that linear single phone line previously, RTT is so much more than that. So if I, as a consumer, want to utilize RTT and make a call to, let's say, another RTT user, who uses a different phone carrier, I would initiate that call, that RTT call, and as it passes through the system, all the information, when it reaches that other individual's carrier network, it gets condensed and consolidated. It's compressed, for lack of a better word, until it arrives at the other carrier's network. That other RTT user, because of that compression, gets a garbled, unclear message, because the information is not allowed to travel from point to point in its original form. And the carriers are still working out that pass-through. It requires them to be able to pass. That requirement for that pass-through was supposed to be enacted 8 years ago, and they have yet to achieve 100% functionality in that aspect. Now, with that carrier limitation, the only thing that can currently be sent is text or audio. Remember, I talked about all those other capabilities of video and data. Unfortunately, due to the systems that are in place with those carriers, the only things that we can use RTT for now is text and audio. So this is a challenge, of course. They need to meet our additional needs. Now, the reason why Maryland has not fully promoted RTT technology is because the user experience on a mobile, where they would set up their RTT, it's already native to smartphone technology. If you look under your accessibility settings, you can turn on RTT. It's there and ready to be used. However, when you open it up, the user experience is subpar. Like I mentioned before, those limitations in terms of just using text and audio, and that's due to limitations on the side of the carrier. So it doesn't provide a maximum comfortable, disability-friendly experience. And that's across the board, regardless of whether you have an iOS operating system or an Android system.
Wow.
I'm a strong believer in any time a new service or a new product is introduced, first impressions are the most important. Without a good first impression, you're not going to have a strong, confident adoption of any new technology. So first impressions are mission critical. And based on the current user experience on a mobile phone with RTT, I don't feel confident in a strong first impression. Now, it's very obvious that state relay programs have been reporting a decline in their analog relay minutes, and this has been happening in their states for several years. Now, analog services, which is referencing analog caption phone and TTY specifically, and those customer bases, naturally with the advent of new technology, VRS, IP-based companies, analog is now becoming obsolete, and the transition is being made, and we're expecting to see a continued decline in minutes. Now, the states are only responsible for analog services historically. They have not been responsible for digital services. However, what really changed things rapidly was, as you can see on the slide, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act from November of 2021. In the language of this act, it establishes what's called broadband. So again, the old analog lines are now being replaced with digital lines or IP-based connectivity. That was mandated through this act. And with the funding billions and billions of dollars of funding that's been invested in broadband technology nationwide, that, of course, results in a steeper decline of analog services. However, we need to have the IP structure in place. So what's a state program to do? Deaf Seniors of America, DSA, hosted a webinar in November of 2022. And the topic of the webinar was one number. And the discussion was had in terms of a very common shared frustration and experience in the deaf and hard of hearing community, which is the fact that we unfortunately have to utilize multiple phone numbers. Myself, for example, I have a text number, I have a VRS number, I have a secondary VRS number, I have an IP relay number. So you're looking at 4 or 5 numbers right there just for myself as an individual. Now, if I want to go interact at a doctor's appointment, and they ask me for something simple like my phone number, I have to think to myself, what number is the best way to, what's the best number to share with that doctor? Do I give them my text number? Do I give them my relay number where they can leave me a message? And this happens frequently throughout the deaf and hard of hearing community amongst relay users. And that's what was talked about in that webinar. The hesitation in terms of what relay numbers should be given. And as part of that webinar, there was a group of panelists, one individual in particular, Ed Basson, himself really the father of VRS in this country. And he made the statement that you see here, that the states should be driving the one number effort. They should be taking the lead, and I happen to agree with him. And several other states agreed with that statement as well. Now, of course, our goal is to solve the problem. And what have we done to that effect? Well, in the case of Maryland and California, both of those relay programs are now piloting deaf-blind VRS, also known as MyMMX technology. And that is run and based on RTT technology. And it's showing great promise. So we're looking at that. And the company that creates that, Nwise, which is a Swedish-based company, they were able to give a demonstration of their product. And based on that demonstration, we were able to ask several follow-up questions in terms of its capabilities and could it meet our needs in another capacity. And when the answer was yes, we reached out to California immediately, and based on those subsequent discussions, we've moved forward with this pilot. And from there came UTAP, which I'd like to introduce you with this video. So please enjoy. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that video. I hope it was inspiring. I certainly enjoyed making it available to everyone. So where does this put us in our journey? Remember before I talked about the fact that there was a lack of information about RTT and people's understanding of RTT? So I thought a rebranding might be in order. the Universal Telecommunication Access Platform, or UTAP. Really, at its core is RTT. But I think with the rebranding, it helps people understand right away what the technology and what the service is, and it solves some of those misnomers that are out there. Now, let's talk about the user experience of UTAP. Now, this is cloud-based technology with multiple endpoints. Could be mobile app, could be computer, could be a tablet app, it could be accessible technology app. I'm going to use mobile app for this demonstration as an endpoint. So, with your mobile technology, you would download the app, and it won't be called UTAP. It'll be branded according to the state relay program. So in my case, it would be Maryland Relay. It would be our app. So I would open the Maryland Relay app in this hypothetical situation. Another state, for example, it might be California. There would be the California Relay app. I would download this application to my mobile device. In this case, we're going to use Maryland Relay. I would open up the app. I would log in. The account would be generated via the state. Okay. All state relay programs would provide oversight for the accounts to ensure, for example, that these folks are vetted and that they are legitimate users of the service, and that these folks have difficulty using a standard telephone and qualify. And based on that qualification, they would then receive an account. Once you would enter your account, you would have a myriad of options, various VRS providers, text relay, caption phone service, ASR, automated speech recognition, text capabilities, 911 emergency access at the ready. All of these using one phone number, all in one app with multiple endpoints, which means you as a user would finally have the experience of being able to give somebody one phone number, regardless of whether they want to call you or reach out via text. As I already explained, through that app, you could utilize any type of relay service. And for an incoming call, again, once you've set up an account, you would pick what's called a default relay provider as part of your account setup. And you could add additional functionality like assigning a type of relay for each caller. That would be separate from your default setting. So for example, in my case, I can use spoken language with my mom. And she understands me since she's used to my voice. So I would use IPCTS and speak for myself and utilize the captions as well if I was in a phone call with my mother. So I could assign that specific relay service if it was my mother calling me. Now with my uncle, a little bit of a different situation there. He's not as familiar with my voice, so for that type of incoming call, if it was my uncle, I would assign it to automatically go to VRS. So a fantastic customizable feature. It gives you more freedom to utilize whatever service is best. In addition to that, the critical need for emergency access is there. That's a big issue in the deaf and hard of hearing community. Being able to access emergency services quickly. Someone said that we, the deaf, can't afford to have a heart attack because the time it takes to reach out via relay in order to get emergency services started, in that time frame, that person's critical window has expired in the case of a heart attack, and they might not make it through that experience. So we can't afford to have a heart attack just because of the time it takes. With UTAP, it solves that issue because it gives you direct, immediate, instantaneous contact to 911. So that's an example of what the UTEP experience would look like. Now, some people wonder what the difference between UTAP and IRIS is. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with IRIS, essentially, IRIS technology is, for lack of a better word, a service created by MITRE in partnership with the Rochester Institute of Technology, or RIT, with the goal of solving the one number problem that I previously mentioned. So IRIS was developed out of that goal, and the focus has been on native technology, meaning it is part of the phone's operating system. In comparison to UTAP, UTAP, as I mentioned before, is cloud-based. It is over-the-top technology, meaning it's an application. It is not native to the device itself or its operating system. So that's the difference between the two technologies. Now, IRIS has the capability of changing relay service during a call, whereas UTAP doesn't. You have to, if you wanted to change to a different relay service, you would have to hang up and then reinitiate the call using the secondary service. There are, of course, pros and cons to each piece of technology, both IRIS and UTAP. I can see in the future how the two might merge and become one overarching beautiful experience for all of us. So in the state of Maryland, we are very excited to pilot this technology. We are in the process of setting up what's called a feasibility study to that effect. California is also interested in moving forward in kind. Washington State as well, and the state of Virginia is very excited about the possibilities. All 4 states want to run a pilot for the purposes of collecting data in terms of the user experience and what it may look like. We have 4 states who want to be involved in that pilot. That being said, there are some, based on our discussions, outlying concerns that we have. Top of mind are 2 main concerns. The first one being, can state relay programs provide IP-based relay services within their state? Is that allowable? And then the second question is, the rules and regulations that the FCC already has in place the ITRS database, where all the VRS and IP-based relay service phone numbers come from, that directory, there is language there, which I'll just summarize. Basically what it states is 1 phone number per relay device. Okay, so that's the current language. And that's the rule. And we fundamentally disagree with that rule because it prevents us from having 1 phone number. So the question is, are we able to change it from relay device to user? 1 phone number per relay user instead of 1 phone number per relay device. That's the concept that we're pursuing. And that's the question that we've posed to the FCC. The FCC's response, through some brief meetings we've had, has been, again, can states provide relay service, IP relay service? To that effect, the response has been, and I'm just, how to phrase this would be, the FCC has said in response that really, you states already are. And what they're referring to is relay conference captioning. We provide that service, that CART service, for virtual meetings. RCC is the nomenclature we use. And yes, that is IP-based service technically. And many states currently do provide that service. and it is an IP-based service. Now, the FCC, the reason why they move forward with that is because of state government procurement and contracts and bidding. They contract with ITRS, which is certified by the FCC. So, to answer the second question regarding one number, FCC's response was that they are currently working with the North American Numbering Council, the NANC, in a unified effort to create what's called a unified number, basically meaning one number. That's the concept. So those discussions are already in place at the FCC level right now, which is very exciting for us. And it seems that our goals and their goals are aligned to that effect. So the FCC has reached out for some additional information. The telecommunications relay industry needs to be aware that they need to make sure that their technology is compatible with UTAP moving forward, and they need to make those adjustments if necessary. And we've called a meeting with all the VRS and all the IP-CTS providers, as well as the IP relay providers as well. We gave a presentation about UTAP, what our concept was, what the technology that ran it behind it was, and it was well received. It was a very positive experience for everybody. So they're aware of what's coming. Another FCC ask was we needed to generate community support. So therefore, we have presented to the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Consumer Advocacy Network, the DHH-CAN, which is a consortium of nonprofit organizations that advocate for the needs of the deaf blind, and the hard of hearing community, as well as the late deafened community. Just a variety of stakeholder groups that comprise that organization. All of those organizations were in strong favor of the concept. They loved the idea, and they were very, very excited. So, in terms of next steps, where we are now is I am working with NASRA, the National Association of State Relay Administrators, and we are in conversations to come to an agreement on specifics and details. Once that's drafted, we will have all the organizations sign off on that in form of, and as well as industry leaders, in the form of a letter that will show our community support, as well as the answers to their questions, and then that will be passed on to the FCC. That, of course, will then lead into our feasibility study in terms of how this will work. We have a lot of questions that are going to be pertinent parts of that study. As of right now, Maryland and California are going to be the first two states who are going to move forward with the piloting, and we're very excited about that. We expect that to begin in a few months after our submission to the FCC. We will compile from that feasibility study data, which will of course then have to be analyzed. That will then become a report that is then passed on to the FCC with additional justification as to why we need to move to a UTAP platform and allow the states the freedom to be able to grow and provide the best telecommunication access that they can to their constituents. I want to say thank you for being here for my presentation. My email, if you need to reach out to me, is travis.dougherty@maryland.gov. Again, thank you so much for your time and attention.